Hi everybody, this is Christina the Happy Heretic, and I am preparing some worm food ahead of time for my worm bins, and I wanted to show how I'm doing it. It's super easy, and I didn't bring it over here, but I just have a small Whopper chopper. I think I paid $9.99 for it at Walmart. And we had some salad greens in the kitchen, in the fridge, that were getting wilted and no one was gonna eat them. I have some pulverized eggshell, that's the white flakes that you see, and some coffee grounds. So I put some of this in my worm bins I wanna say yesterday afternoon, in my big worm bin. And in one day, I ended up with a pretty good size worm ball. So that was pretty exciting, and I didn't have my phone with me or I would have done a video. So what I do is I throw it in there, I blend it all up together in a couple of batches because mine is super small. You could use a large blender if you have one or want to mess it up. Mine's just so easy to clean, the small one is. And then what I do is you can just put it in to an ice tray. That way you can do, I like to do smaller feedings smaller feedings more often than great big feedings, once every week or two. And this allows me to do that. Because my bin is so large, and I know you guys have heard about the forbidden foods, right? The onion and citrus and peppers, anything acidic, anything citrusy, that kind of thing, that you should not put it in your worm bin. And if you have a teeny tiny worm bin, you probably should be incredibly careful because almost anything could throw off your pH, throw off your moisture, things like that. But I have a pretty big toad, a big black one we got from Home Depot. And my worms can escape pretty much anything. There's several different ranges of moisture, of light, of heat, food, bedding material, because again, I don't believe there's any one right way to raise worms. I don't believe there's usually one right way to do much of anything. There are best practices, there are things that are better than others, but a lot of the things you're told not to do is for general safety. For instance, if you have a worm bed this big and you throw the wrong food in there or too much water, those worms are going to die. There's nowhere to get away. There's not enough soil to absorb anything or for them to get away if they don't like it. But in my bin, I have everything from paper shreds, like newspaper, junk mail, things like that, to cardboard I've shredded, to pet hair, to what comes out of the canister of your vacuum cleaner. It's mostly dirt, sand, skin cells, hair, pet hair, your hair, things like that. That's almost always what's in your vacuum cleaner bag. I put that in there and they love it. By the way, they love pet hair. I never fail to get, if I pick up a clump in my worm bin that looks furry, I know it's the pet hair, and there's always worms all throughout it. So it takes forever to break down, but they're happy, and it adds, I want to say it's chitin. I'd have to look it up. But the reason I don't use just peat moss or just coconut coir or just paper or just one food is because I'm vermicomposting, not looking to get just a small amount of pure worm castings. If I go out into my worm bin right now and scoop up a handful of something, and especially since it's outside, and I also put in native soil, things like that. But because I give them lots of different types of food, all green leafy things like that. No, I don't do meat, but that's mostly because I don't want to attract pests. But the soil has coconut coir. If I have finished my microgreens, I throw the whole flat with the roots still in there. They love that. And sometimes seedlings sprout, but that's fine. I allow pretty much any kind, I'm not gonna allow roaches anywhere for any reason, but pretty much anything else that gets into the worm bin outside is fine with me. When I kept it inside, I didn't allow it. I kept lots and lots of bedding. I covered the food sources really well, and I didn't have much of a problem. Sometimes if you have fresh fruit, there are fruit fly or fungus gnat or any number of things, eggs already on your food, which is why you should wash really, really well before you eat. But if I had any problem at all, I just sprinkled some DE, that's Diatomaceous Earth. As a matter of fact, let me show you what I use. I supplement with a few things. Sorry about that, I should have had it, but I didn't think about it. This is food grade DE, and you can use it for just about anything. I hope that's on screen. Is it? Yeah, it is. And I actually put it in a drink almost every single day. It helps me internally with a wide variety of things. DE will kill hard-bodied insects, things with exoskeletons. I think the theory is that it essentially dries them out. But DE is, Diatomaceous Earth is fossilized diatoms, in this case, fresh water. And when it's wet, it's completely harmless, including to the insects. But people forget to say the next step, which is, suppose you sprinkle this on your garden bed or your plants, and some water gets on it, or your plants were moist. During the time that it's moist, it's pretty much harmless, but it dries right back out. This stuff comes from the water. It comes from animals that lived in the water 13, 15 million years ago. So don't worry about that. Food grade, just because I want to make sure it's pure and doesn't have any additives, you can actually eat it, and I do. You can sprinkle it if you have roaches. If you see roaches somewhere, we're in the South, one or two are going to get in every once in a while. And so I'll just, especially maybe around your appliances, they seem to like the warmth, maybe around your trash can, inside or outside, sprinkle some DE, and it works every time. It's not a deterrent. It won't keep them from coming back. But they walk across it with their nasty little feet, and they take it back to the nest, and anything that gets on dies. And if you do that early enough, you don't have to worry about pesticides. So point is, for the worms, it's harmless. They do not have exoskeletons. But it's very, very good for your garden, which is where I was going with this. I'll put DE or sprinkle a very, very small amount. Neither of these things need to be used in large amounts of Azomite. And it adds, some mineral content back to the soil. So the point of all of that was to say I am vermicomposting. I'm essentially composting in place with vegetable scraps and coconut coir and DE or Azomite. I'll put some of my garden waste in there. Usually a handful of humus from the woods that introduces really good bacteria and mycorrhiza, things like that. And yes, every once in a while outside you may introduce the eggs of different worm or of insects that you're not fond of, but in composting, almost all of those things are beneficial. It helps the compost. So if I reach in and grab a handful of soil, it's not dirt anymore. Dirt is dead. Soil has living organisms in it. So I can reach in and grab a handful of soil, and yes, my intention in a worm bin is to get the benefits of the worms having digested the material, but I'm going to get that in addition to everything I put in my worm bin is good for my garden, it's good for my plants, that sort of thing. So I do not ever sift either my hot compost or my vermicompost, because you're separating out a lot of the things you're going to want. And I don't mean I don't sift and get the eggs out, and I don't sift and get the worms out. Of course I do that. But in your hot compost, in your compost pile outside, you don't want it to be the texture of a sifted compost. I don't have anything here that I guess it would look like coconut coir, but completely broken down, because a little bit of structure increases your soil structure. It improves your soil structure. It holds water better, which is what you want. It allows oxygen for the plethora of things that you want living in your soil. So that's why I do that. And the last thing, second to the last thing. Second to the last thing I'm really excited about today is this tiny little, I'm calling it my incubator bin. What I did is I went through the big bin, and it's not very old, but I have so many cocoons. And I went in started last night and finished today, and got counted out by hand. I counted by hand to 100. I wanted to make sure I had at least 100. And then I threw the rest that I had harvested in here. So I'm wearing the wrong glasses for up close work, but what I did is I put some fresh coconut coir in here, slightly moistened. I don't know if you're gonna be able to, I don't think you can. Oh wait, maybe. Okay, hang on. Let's see. If you'll look right here, all those little tiny bead looking things are worm cocoons. So there are over 100 in here, and the dark material at the top is bedding out of the bin they came in. That will help. They're surrounded by a little bit of moisture, keeps the pH right in there. And then my worms love coffee filters, and it's got a little bit of coffee on it still, but they're moistened because I don't want the worms to dry out. Keep them protected. And it's small because I want to be able to contain it. I won't keep them in here for very long. I just want to see, what I really wanted to see is what kind of yield I got on 100 to 130 cocoons. And of course, holes in the top. And then I labeled it and dated it. And now we wait. While I was harvesting, a couple of them hatched, and I'm not sure if they somehow got, if maybe the casings, they felt pretty firm, but one of them may have gotten damaged, but I got a couple of live babies while over the 24 hours that I was doing this harvest. And so that's going to be interesting. I would be sad if any of them didn't make it. But the really exciting thing today for me is I have a pound of African Nightcrawlers on the way. And I started with red wigglers like most people do because they're so forgiving. Everyone said if you're new to worm farming, get red wigglers because they're heat tolerant and they can go down to about 40 degrees or so. And I keep a big bin so that if something does go wrong, there's almost always, other than it actually completely flooding, they'll be able to get to a place that they want to be and survive. But anyway, the African Nightcrawlers are not so forgiving, but they get much larger. They are a beast for composting, according to everything that I've read and researched. They eat more, they get larger. You get fewer worms with in a pound because they are larger, but that's okay. That just means they're mature and I can get them breeding in no time. So they're gonna stay in the house. My red wigglers are outside and I'm about to start my second large bin. I need to do a lot more harvesting of the cocoons because I do want, at least by the end of the summer, I want 5 large beds outside and probably just 1 or 2 large beds inside, and I can keep it in my studio or in the closet. But anyway, so that's what's going on. Quick, easy, convenient, and extremely nutritious way to feed your worms. Another good thing about this is it's going to be frozen, which means when you introduce it to the worm bed, it will add some moisture as well. It will also, once you freeze something, you grind it up and then you freeze it on a molecular basis. It's already breaking down, and that's really what worms eat. Worms don't eat leaves; they eat the decomposition on the leaves. So, in any event, an easy way to feed your worms conveniently, and this is good especially if you have a small one. I have a much larger block that I fed mine today in the big bin, but this is going to be good for my smaller experimental bins. A little incubator bin is what I'm calling it. Why I add DE and Azomite, and hopefully pretty soon we'll have a side-by-side comparison of what the red wigglers do against the Nightcrawlers. But either way, I'm excited. They're a larger worm. They're kind of a little bit more challenging, and I love that. So that's it. If you have any questions, post them in the comments, and I always respond. And for now, goodbye. It's the Happy Heretic, and like it if you like it, and subscribe if you want to see what crazy thing I'm up to on any given day.